Welcome back, everybody. Just Mike here. Anyway, today we have a clock that I got super cheap with super cheap shipping. And the only reason why I bought this clock is because I saw the hinges on it and I thought that's very interesting and might be an antique. And which, looking at the picture, I didn't examine what it said, anything about the clock. It didn't say the name and the title of what it was, in which they wouldn't have known anyway, but it happens to be a Gilbert clock. And this clock, it's about 4 foot tall or something like that, but in which I was shocked when they actually shipped it. But this clock cost me $11 for the clock itself, and they charged me $10 shipping. And this came from one side of the United States clear to the other side where I live. And that was amazing. They lost big time, let's say, when it comes to shipping. But I kind of think Goodwill has an in when it comes to shipping. I'll put it that way. It might be donated to them. I don't know what it is, but sometimes it's really cheap. But I'll show you the clock. Or I should say, show you the pictures of the clock that I saw, and take a look at the hinges on there and tell me what you think. Starting the video, normally I'll show the clock, and then I normally end up doing the case first, cleaning it up, whatever it needs. But this time I'm going to work on the movement first, and then I'll get into the case. The only damages I got was the round glass at the top. That broke, in which the clock was quite big, and so you kind of tell they threw the box around, even though it was well bubble wrapped inside. But the movement and face broke off and slid down, and then the heavy cast iron weight to the two rotted gong, that came off. I'm sure that probably smashed through the window and broke it. I didn't complain because as cheap as I got this clock, and if that's all that's wrong with this clock, I am totally thrilled. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe while you're here and give me a thumbs up. Let's take a look at that movement now. So this is the movement that came in the clock. It's almost surprising to see this curved because it can't tick that far, so I'm hoping this is all, let's say, original. It does have a round deal here to accept the pendulum, and so, like I say, this is a little bit odd to me for as long as this clock is. It does have a G here, and also, let's bring you a little bit closer so you can see all this, maybe. And I did clean this up just a little bit to find out what this thing was. But there's the G right there. This says 311. So I'm not sure what that number's for. I know it's going to be a long pendulum, but I'm going to have to figure that out because there was no pendulum sent with the clock. The only thing I got was the bottom part of the stick, so you could adjust the stick or the bob up and down. In here, well, before that, here there's a number 15, and talking with my friend Mark, he says that number means this movement was built in 1915. Anyway, that's all the marks that are on this side. You come to the back side, and I used a little polish on here as I couldn't see what it said. There again it says the G on there for the Gilbert, and this here I polished it and I can see it's Wm L Gilbert Clock Company, Winston, Connecticut, I guess that is, USA. So on this movement, it wouldn't run at all, or just very slow. I decided to add a little bit of oil to it just to see what it would do, and it actually ran, or I should say the gong worked. So this strikes on the half hour with one gong. This looks like it's off. So it should have dropped down in there, I think, and it didn't. 2, 3, it should have dropped, I think. But like I say, at least now I know that it actually, let's say, works. On the ticking, I haven't wound the spring up or anything, so I don't know if it'll tick or not. It will, as long as I put the pressure on it. Like I say, I don't have the spring wound up. And so, technically speaking, I guess everything's good, just needs some adjusting. I'm going to go ahead and take this whole thing apart. But first, obviously, I'm going to get pictures of the front, back, and then take pictures in through, so that way I can see exactly where everything's supposed to go. This is kind of unique where it's got the bell around this governor here, and this is what is the speed control for the gong. But go ahead and get all your pictures in there, and of course your front and back. And then as you take this thing apart, you're going to want pictures, and we're going to try to take this thing apart to where we can get leave all the gears in. And this one here looks like it's going to be easier to take this apart. I'm going to call it upside down because of the way the springs and most of the gears are setting. So there's a chance, because of that, you're going to want to take your pictures this way, because if you lose all the gears as you pull this thing apart, you want to know the position of the gears, what they kind of look like and whatnot. So take your pictures with this pointing up. I forgot to show you, this has got a silver colored bob, and it's coming out of the casing, so it's going to have to be worked back in there. Like I say, this didn't come with the stick. The only part of the stick that came was the part to where you can adjust it. These two pieces go to the bottom of the clock, and there are no finials on the bottom of it, and so these will have to be put back on. And I'm just totally guessing, but I decided, I found some they're gold colored wood balls that are, I think they're just under an inch, I don't remember. And I figured the balls might be the best, so if you ever take this off the wall and set the clock down, at least they're not going to break off usually. And if I can, I don't know, I just ordered them, so I don't know if the balls will fit in snugly or just what it's going to take to hold them in. Otherwise, instead of gluing them in, I'd like to be able to take them out and set them inside the case if I ever take the clock down. These were the hands for the clock. I'm not sure what this is. It almost looks like it's part of something that used to hang the clock, but then again it's got this here, so I'm not quite certain on that. And there might be another one of these hanging off the back of the clock on a gold colored rope. I do know you don't want to hang a clock by a rope, because then it'll lean away from the wall and start ticking wrong, I guess we'll say, if it'll tick at all. I found that on many cuckoo clocks, and you can see where the wear was wrong. Anyway, it came with this key that doesn't go to this clock. This key was also in there, but it's a bit loose. No name on it, but It doesn't fit real tight, but it does fit, so I can wind this side up, because I have to wind it up in order to get a zip tie on the spring, and then I can let the spring loose and get all the spring onto the zip tie so I can safely get it off of there without destroying everything inside there. This here is part of the round glass that was around the movement itself, and looking at how thick the glass is, I'd say this is just possibly double strength, but I'll get the same strength of glass that was in the clock, so it'll be, let's say, safe. I think single strength would be thinner and might not be the right glass, but I'll check that out a little bit later. Anyway, let me get this wound up and get the zip tie on, and I'll be back. So I have this on here. What I plan on doing is, for the clicker, it has a spring here. I'm going to see if I can just pop this off so there's no weight on the clicker, and so when I wind this backwards, I can flick the clicker back, and I should be able to unwind all the power onto the zip tie. Actually, just turning it a little bit and then coming back, it's free. I don't want it to take off on me, so I'm going to try to go as slow as I can getting this down. I don't want to burst the zip tie, and you don't want to get a cheap zip tie anyway, because you're dependent on that to, when you get this apart, to stay there until you can pull it off by yourself, and you don't want to damage all these gears. Okay, we got all the weight off of there. This has got the little wire in it to keep it from pulling all the way through. And that's kind of showing the spring is let down all the way, so that shouldn't be a problem. There's not much else you can take off on this thing. So now's the time to, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nuts to get off. Now we're going to take these off, and you want to pay attention when you take these springs off of there. Here you want to make sure this spring always stays with this gear. The reason why is this spring wraps around this way, this spring wraps around the opposite way, and these shafts more than likely won't fit if you swapped them, let's say, through, because of the distance. You have a distance here, and this is made to not let this come up, where on this side it's got all these other parts in here that's made to come clear up to the top. So we have it loose. This here will come off obviously with the plate, but let's see what we can do to get this thing loosen off. I don't see any springs attached to this plate, such as for the hammers. They're in there somewhere, and normally I try to remember to release them too, but I didn't really see them sticking out, so I didn't release them. Tell how dirty it is in there. Now these plates also don't have a varnish on them, and so more than likely I'm going to, well, I know I am, I'm going to shine these plates up so they'll look really pretty again. Not that you'll ever see them, but that's what I want to do. And so now's the time that you can get pictures looking down, looking at a better angle compared to just on the sides, to see just where these gears are fitting. And also now you can see where the springs are that go to these levers here, including looking at them for the gongs. And also check out where those wires go. You might still want to take pictures as you take this thing apart so you can see it. So let's go ahead and start taking some of this apart. The obvious, they're sticking right out. Now this here, I'm going to take a picture of down below so I can see just where those levers are, and those are what are going to the gong for the half hour and the hour trigger, which they also relate to this gear here because the lever drops into that hole. So now is a good time to take a picture of that as well. Say the more pictures you take, the better off you're going to be. Let's go ahead and get this time sight off so we have it out of our way so we can see what the inners look like for our timing, we'll say. And I have a feeling we're going to be changing some bushings just because of the age of it, and it's so dirty I couldn't shake anything, and so once it's clean, then I'm going to put it back together and see if there's something I need to move. So these here hammers are in the way to get this out. And let's just say they're crossed, so I want to make sure I record the crossness of it. So now you should be able to take a better picture looking inside there. Because what it is this one lever has this stopped right now because it's not time for it to evidently gong. These spring wires are wrapped around this post here. And this one has looks like it's resoldered back on. Let's pull that up. Yep, the warning pin. It might have came off and they had to solder a piece on there to hold it in place. And these two bobs here normally are what make the gong operate. Those pegs. This does have, let's say, a little bit of power around it, not much, because it is stretched a little bit going across. But definitely these need some cleaning. And this is connected to this gear. We'll have to check that out when we clean the spring, because we're going to clean everything, obviously. So now we're ready to go ahead, dump these in the cleaner. Like I say, I'm not concerned about how long these stay in there, because they're going to get polished. And even if they discolor, which normally if they discolor, it's because you have your temperatures set too high on your sonic cleaner, ultrasonic cleaner. And sometimes it's just a chemical reaction, but the polish normally shines these right up. The only place that won't shine, which I don't care, it's on the inside, is the spring's been rubbing pretty good here, and there's a chance you can't get that out. But you can see I just really quickly done it there, and just for doing it real quick and not trying to get anything fancy, just looking at the name, it did pretty good. So I have it put back together again. It's ticking. I have these. Well, this one needs to be loosened up a little bit more. But I just wanted to experiment before I took them all the way off. So this is a Bim Bam. I need to get my springs hooked up onto these still, but we do have it running. So these plates here are on top of the clock, or the top side, and what these were for were to let the sound from the gong come out, or I should say the rods come out much better. and they were at one time covered with it looks like a very thin screen-like material. And so I'm gonna have to go shopping at the store, fabric store, and see if I can get something that might look good in behind here. And I do plan on shining these back up. These are brass. There are two of them. On the back of the clock, there's this rope, and I'm not sure, this might have been with the clock, might not have been. I don't know why you would, it is a heavy clock, but I don't know why you would hang it on a rope, although back in the day, depends on what they use for material on the walls. It could have been the cement and lath, or whatever they call it, plaster and lath, what do they call that? And in the old days, they also hung pictures. Used to have, what, 10, 12-foot ceilings. They had a trim board that went all the way around up above on the wall, and they used to have hangers that would hang over that and drop down and catch your pictures. So that might be the same thing with this clock, but I'd be surprised if the clock wouldn't lean forward and start messing up. But this is just what I found on the back of the clock. I'll go ahead and shine those up. I'm not sure if I'm going to install those back on the clock or not. I might install them back there. So if it's, let's say, turned into a floor model, at least you'll have something to keep it from tipping over. Here are the hinges, and these two were on the box of the clock. I don't know if that's bright enough or not. Getting my white balance is heck to me sometimes. There you go. Hope that's not too bright. But anyway, these are on the box of the clock itself, and they stuck out. And then these were on the door, and the door would just, because of the peg, would just set down into the hole. It wasn't that one better, so it belongs to that one. And so these stuck out of the clock, so the door would be right here. Those stuck out, and that's the reason why I bought this clock, because I saw those and I thought those look, besides unique, old. Like I said, I didn't know anything about this clock until I got it here, and I am happy I got it here. So we're going to shine these things up because they're brass, and I want them to stand out as well as I do these. I also noticed on these hinges, there's I'm going to call it a part number. This is 3736. And this one, you might see it better, is the same, the lower part. This one here is 3737. So I started thinking about this rope on the back of the clock, and it finally dawned on me, go check the back of the clock. There is no hole drilled in the clock to hold it on the wall, and so that's what this rope is for, with what it was tied to and screwed to the clock. And this piece was also in the clock, and not knowing for sure, but I almost want to say this rounded part was hooked over the trim up towards the ceiling, and there could have been a wire or whatever dropped straight down from this ring, which would possibly hold on to that rope. I'm just guessing here. I've been a long time ago, but I've seen something of the sort, and if you look at the old pictures of people hanging pictures in the house, you'll see there's some trim board up above, like I'm talking about, where this would hook on and then come down and hook to your picture. And like I say, it's possibly because of what the walls are made out of at the time. While I'm waiting for that other stuff to clean, I'm going to go ahead and polish this, try to get it back together again, and see how it turns out. I'm happy with it. Really cleaned up good. Can't shave in the shine, but who's going to shave with it ticking back and forth in a clock? So I needed a new upper piece of glass. And the only thing I had was this parchment paper, and so I laid the door down onto a book with the parchment paper in between so I could get the exact measurement on the inside when I have it cut. And also, this here's broken. So I'm going to have to take this and glue it back together again. But be careful trying to get that glue in there. So this here dial, I don't believe is original to the clock. It very well could be, but I'm just giving a wild guess. It's really thin. Everyone's left their fingerprint, and I'm hoping mine's on there too to show I was here. But it's thin. This here, there's a, might be in here, and then this ring feels like it was put on afterwards. So what I'm thinking is it might have been really bad and they went ahead and changed it. None of this makes any difference to this clock because it's all hidden. These things were so dirty. This one here I haven't done too much polishing yet. And when I talk about dirty, I think these were actually painted along with the inside of the cage that lets the sound come outside the clock. Those fit on the side of the clock. I was almost getting ready to just call that good, but this one's shined up so nice. I'm going to work at this one a little bit better. Also, I want to mention each one of these, they're made for the other half, we'll say. So you have to match them up. I noticed if I took this one and put it onto the other one, the holes aren't exactly right. They made it to fit its own identity, I guess we'll call it. So we're going to shine this one up, and after I'm done shining it up, I'm going to go ahead and use this so they'll stay shiny and your fingerprints shouldn't show up on the brass. So I got the case. I went ahead and used 4/0 steel wool on it because the finish was crazing on here, and so I wanted to smooth it out a little bit. And then I used a scratch cover on here, and then I went ahead, after that dried, I used the Howard's wax, which is finish is still pretty thick on here, and so it didn't soak in as much as it normally does, let's say on something like a cuckoo clock that doesn't necessarily have a finish on it. The door, I didn't steel wool, and by the looks of it I should have, because there's no real shine here. It's matted, I guess we'll say, and so there's a chance I might take the door and steel wool it and start over again, maybe not. We got the glass in thanks to my brother Bob. He does stained glass, and he knows how to cut a circle without it splitting down the center of your circle. So far I'm happy with that. We have the nice brass hinges and a brass doorknob now compared to what you could see before. And so I'm ready to put the movement in here. I don't have a pendulum, so I'm going to have to fake a pendulum and see how well the movement works in this clock. And I don't know the actual length. I'm just going to be guessing when it comes to putting a pendulum in here and then actually running it to see if I need to take an inch off or need to add an inch or something like that. And I wanted to show this door how unique it is. It opens up, and if you want it off, you lift it. It's a little tight right now. You lift it and it comes right off because it has the little peg underneath here, and this way if you need to get in here to do something, you don't have the door in your way, which normally you shouldn't ever have to take this door off. So I did some quick research, I guess, and actually found something. The hanger that I found with this clock is what they call, it's a nail hanging hardware back in the day, and it's nice they sent that with the clock, or surprising too. And it's got hooks on the back, and that there's, so when you have it nailed on, it's not going to be sliding back and forth. And by the looks of it, these were straight, so you could push it into the wall and make that secure. And then this wire rope that was with this came in and hung here for the clock to hang on, which almost surprises me. But then I guess you might have enough room for the pendulum to swing out a little bit as the clock tips. On the bottom back, there's two little metal studs that are coming out, and they're only out something like a 1/16. I can kind of understand those if they adjusted out so you get the back of the clock level as well, but that's not the way it is. And so I'm just going to have to try this little dealy bob out when I hang it on the wall and see how well that thing works. This rope, besides being really old, and like I say, it does have wire in here, but it kind of feels scary, I guess we'll say, because after what this clock has been through and whatnot, I don't want it to fall off the wall. So what I might end up doing is putting these brackets back on, which I will put them back on, but I'll probably put a heavier wire or a cable that they sell nowadays to go from one side to the other, so that way this can hook to the cable. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this quick little, well, I don't know about quick, but clock series. This here, like I say, for the price I got it for, including shipping, that was remarkable. God was with me, I guess. He wanted me to have the clock. Anyway, don't forget to subscribe because it's free. And check out my friend here on the end, Mark. He has a halfway decent channel too, and he gives you a lot of helpful hints on cuckoo clocks, but he does talk about other clocks as well. Anyway, thanks for stopping by, and until next time, God bless.